I can't mute myself now. Okay, I don't know why I can't mute myself. Okay.
Hi everyone. We've got a number of people from the Disabled People's Direct Action Network with us on Zoom today. And we're going to be talking about Rights Not Charity, which is a campaign that Dan has supported for a very long time. And also in the context of the current Children in Need campaign that's going on to raise funds, which happens every year in the UK. We're going to start by asking everyone here to introduce themselves and say where they're from. So I'll ask each person one at a time, please, to do that. So next on my screen is Sue. Hi.
Hi, Dennis. I'm Sue. I'm from Greenwich, Greenwich Dan, and yeah, I'm a member of Dan and have participated in a few protests against children in need in the past, and also some Rights Not Charity protests, such as the Block Telethon protest. So I should be talking about that a little bit later.
Awesome, thanks Sue. And next on my screen, I have Hiya Kate.
There we go, unmuted. Hi Dennis and everybody, it's good to be here. I'm the geriatric of the group, the mother to you all. What do I say? I was around when we first started charging to war to get rights for access to buses, access to rights. Yeah. I'm Kate Brown.
Nice one, thank you, Kate. And also we have with us today, Ernest. Hello, Ernest.
Hello there, my name's Ernest. I took part in a number of the demos in the 90s as well. And I also wrote for DAN magazine as well, Disability Arts in London magazine. And like everybody else, I've been protesting for many a year. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks so much, Ernest. I love all those books in the background. What a fabulous place you're sitting in. And next I've got up on my screen, I've got showing up next Nigel and then Simone. So first of all, hello Nigel.
Dennis, hi everybody. I'm in London. I've been around for a little while, and I've done quite a lot of actions with other groups.
Nice one, Nigel. And then finally, Simone, hopefully is going to say hi. Hi, Simone.
Hi, and can you put my camera on? Just for a moment. Okay, hello? Hi, have you got my camera on? Hello?
You should be able to put your camera on. There we go. Hi, Simone.
Hi, I can't see am I in the camera? Because I can't see it. I can't see what I look like in the camera.
You look brilliant.
Okay.
You're perfectly in view. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Simone. I have been a member of DAN, and I'm also organising the Free Our People campaign, which is a campaign working with people with learning difficulties and autism to get out of psychiatric hospitals and assessment and treatment units. And yeah, I remember being on the Children in Need protests many years ago, and block telephone as well. And I worked at the BBC one year whilst it was going on. So interesting times for me in those days, having working at the BBC From the Edge was at the same time as Children Need were one of these charity, and I've been involved in various DAN actions around rights, not charity, at the beginning in the context of campaigning for anti-discrimination legislation. If you want to turn my video off, that would be great, so I can keep on cleaning, and then I'll ask you to put it back on when I've got something substantial to say.
Awesome, that's wonderful, Simone. Right, well, in true Dan style, I'm just going to go in with some real straightforward questions here, and I'm going to put people maybe a bit on the spot, unfortunately. And I think perhaps we'll all look at the same questions. So really, the first two same questions I'm going to ask everyone are: why are children in need in the UK at the moment? Why are they in need? And the second point then being, why do we think telethons like Children in Need are not the answer? Does anyone volunteer to be the first one to speak to that? Oh, nice one. Thank you, Kate. So yes, please, I'd love to hear why are children in need? And so why is this telethon not the answer?
Oh, we're supposed to be a progressive society. Yeah, why do we have children in need? Why do we need to raise funds for children in need? Surely they should be given what their needs are straight away. They shouldn't have to beg. Please, pretty please. You know, we're not back in the beginning of the 1900s where children had to sleep on the street, or are we? You know, we shouldn't have charity. We should have rights for children. When are children ever going to have rights? I remember years ago, a little boy, he'd been shaken by his mother and his brain had come out of his head and he'd gone blind. He was 2 years old. And the foster mother said to me, she said, I just don't get it. The social worker still says the mother has rights to come and see him once a month. And she said every time she picks him up, he screams with fear. But she had the rights and the child didn't. And that's wrong. That was a long time ago. We're in 2000 and whatever, 20? Yeah, 20. 2020, and we're still getting it wrong. Children shouldn't be in need. Thank you.
No, absolutely right, Kate. Not in 2020. And I was going to go next to Nigel, if that's all right with Nigel. That'd be awesome. So why are children in need, and why isn't a telethon the answer?
I think one of the problems with things like Children in Need is it doesn't give the same things to all children with the same needs. It spreads itself. If you're lucky enough to be in a group that's going to get the money from Children in Need, you're going to get the money. If you're not lucky enough to be in that group, you're not going to get the money. And most groups haven't even if you give them lots and lots of money, won't have enough money to help everybody, even in a small area with a certain need. And especially now, where every charity is begging for money, I think there's going to be people who are reliant on that money. It's going to be disappointed because people are not going to have the money to give to children in need anyway.
Yeah, you're so right. And like you say, it gets people competing against each other for the same pot of money when it should be a right in the first place. Let me see, who else? Might you like to speak next, Ernest?
Yep.
So yeah, why are children in need and why isn't a telephone the answer?
You need to put my video on. You've turned it off.
Sorry, that was an accident. Hang on, Ernest.
Okay, all right. I agree with the points that are being made. I mean, one of the worst things, if you're relying on, charity, it's obviously extremely stressful because you never know when you're going to get any money. You're always on the edge of everything collapsing and everything being shut down and not getting anything. And that's not a great way to run society. So charity is not a good way of, serving all the kids and the people in general. We really should be properly funded rather than asking people to, be generous, even though a lot of people actually are suffering themselves, with this terrible year. So charity doesn't really work in many respects. And of course, it creates a lot of problems for disability. We don't develop any kind of independence. Because we're always, our only survival mechanisms if people are generous enough to give a certain amount and that the organizers of this then hand it out to us. But as it's shown, not every community even gets anything and maybe not even get the amount that they need to even keep something going. So it doesn't work. I would rather see a more central government funding, keeping places going and help disabled people develop a more independent life of benefits and so on, so people can actually stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak.
Yeah, you're so right. And charity just doesn't encourage that. They depend on us being helpless and dependent to carry on doing what they do, don't they? Simone, are you in a good situation to speak next to us on this?
Oh, have you got my camera on? Okay. Hi, have you got my camera on, Dennis?
Yep, you're on.
Okay. Okay, just tell me if I'm not in an appropriate place because I can't see myself. Right, okay. I think the first thing is, the problem we have is legislation does not provide really children with any rights. So children at the moment don't have rights to mainstream education, they don't have rights to leisure, they don't have rights to the same things that other people take for granted, and that it's very much dependent on parents' preference, parents' choice and control, and therefore the whole concept of children having rights is still alien for a lot of people and organisations. We still talk about children, special educational needs, so the language is still there. Children with special educational needs, special children. So again, we're not, because disabled children are still not got rights in their own name, we are still are the whole idea that children should have rights is, you know, just alien out there. And that's the reason why, and therefore the first thing we really need to be doing is campaigning for disabled children to own their own rights, so that idea around disabled children having rights becomes fundamental. Also, I think the big issue is around charity. So it's around who decides whether we're deserving, who decides what we should and shouldn't fund, and how that should be funded. So there's often a lot of conflict around what is being funded for disabled children. It's very much segregated education, therapy sessions, specialised equipment, but it seems to me there is nothing from Children Need that actually funds the empowerment of disabled children, the campaigning of disabled children, to take forward the campaigns. You know, an organisation I work for had applied for that funding, and they were more interested in whether Children Need were more interested in knowing whether the staff we're going to employ had therapy background, play group, work play background, nothing around rights, nothing about empowerment. So we're very much left really in the hands of non-disabled people, trustees, deciding what they think is best for us, as opposed to what we believe is best for us. And as long as we're relying on charity, it means that we are taken away from a whole fundamental basis that we have rights, and that we should have the right, we must have the right to whatever support is needed to enable us to, you know, live and function, you know, in the same as non-disabled people do, and that is supported at an infrastructure level. And people get it, some people don't get it, don't get the support, some people do. What kind of society do we really want to live in? At least if it's done within the parameters of government, then, you know, there is much more public accountability, and we can be much more engaged publicly to make things happen. And it's done in the sense of a framework of entitlements and rights, as opposed to the goodwill of other people deciding what they think is best for us as a community.
Yeah, rights, not goodwill, are very much the key here, aren't they?
Okay.
And so as we're recording this piece for about rights, not charity, and children in need, I'm going to go next to Sue with the questions, and then Adrian, who's just entered us. I'm hoping Adrian might like to answer them after Sue. So, so Sue, to you, why are children in need, and why isn't, you know, a fabulous big telephone and bathing in baked beans? Why isn't that the answer?
Right. Well, I agree with what everyone's been saying so far about this. That children are not adequately provided for today in our society. There is a charity sector. So I feel that children should be adequately funded through central government, local authorities and the health authority to meet their needs, which are not special. They are what every other child needs, which is education, food on the table, mobility, equipment, and just basic rights, but they may need them provided in a slightly different way, but that should be provided centrally so that children don't have the indignity of having to beg for their rights. It really is appalling, and like Kate said, it takes us back to Victorian times and freak shows. Often the images that Children in Need and other such programs like Telethon used to have were very negative portrayals of disabled children, and putting them in a dependency, pitiable role. So like you can see, I've got a t-shirt, Piss on Pity, which is one of our slogans that we often use at these protests. I mean, I definitely feel that there should be provision and, as Simone said, legal rights for children. There shouldn't have to be begging on Children in Need or Telethon on any other such program.
Yeah, and in 2020, nobody should really have to be begging for their rights to be met. And Adrian, if you're there and you want to speak to this,
yeah, unmuted.
nice one. Yes, so why are children in need, and why isn't a Children in Need fundraising campaign the answer?
Well, I mean, I remember burning Pudsey Bear. There were two of us burning him and videoing it by the South Bank. Why? Because of the fundamental problems of rights, not charity. And basically, you know, unless people have rights, they're just chucked around. In terms of children as well, you have to ask at what age they get certain rights. They're meant to get them as soon as possible under the International Convention of the Rights of the Child, which needs to be brought in here. So I was very badly affected personally, because I found out when I was almost 30 years old that I'd actually had, you know, quite a serious brain injury at just and a skull fracture just 1 month old. And it's taken decades to work out what the effects of that are. And there are all kinds of issues there, such as, you know, if you're not properly protected by your mother, as was in my case, they might try and take you away from the mother, and you might end up even worse off if you find out at all. So I'm very, very keen on, you know, children having rights. With rights, you do have the odd little responsibility, but it's mainly about rights. And the other thing is, if they don't have rights, as they tend not to, then basically they get pushed around by everyone, and you can't get in the education system pretty much any way to get what you need. I knew I had problems with things like handwriting and all that kind of thing going through the education system, and I begged and begged to be tested. I wasn't tested for anything until I was about 15, and even then it was wholly inadequate. And I was then denied all kinds of exam things because they said, you haven't had any rehabilitation. When I accessed the records many years ago, that's what they said. Well, of course I hadn't had any rehabilitation. They hadn't provided any, you know. So no, none of the extra time I needed in exams or anything like that, and did much worse than I otherwise would have done. Despite which, I managed to get through university with a fairly low degree because I went to the one place that would give me an amanuensis, somebody who'd actually write for me, just dictate to her as it was. So yeah, we do have to have this. We've got to have inclusion from day one, and we've got to have get rid of that, all that kind of Article 24 opting out of rubbish for the UN Disability Convention. And if I've had a finest hour, it was when I nailed John Bercow on that, which turned out to be the highlight of the parliamentary week. Why was it the highlight? Because basically, my question was, okay, well, why is the Great Britain out of line with Northern Ireland and all these other countries which have ratified the UN Disability Convention in having segregated education. And he really spluttered and couldn't answer that. And to my surprise and delight, that turned out to be the parliamentary kind of highlight of the week. There's some kind of email thing. And this was at a conference that was about autism and education by a charity which was not user-led, but no longer exists. It's been merged into the National Autistic Society. So it kind of illustrates a whole load of things. And I do remember Simone tipping her off when they're doing something around autism and segregated education, which they've had a tendency to do with the all-party parliamentary group on autism, because they've never had any user-led, user-run organizations speak to it. And Simone had a brilliant question. Well, we don't segregate Black people, do we? So what are we doing segregating disabled people? They really couldn't answer it. So I think that's quite enough from me. And now others can join in.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Segregated people of colour, and people of colour are disproportionately thrown out of schools and pipelined towards the prison system. So there are definitely some issues there as well. I guess we could say there's two kind of pipelines. You brought me to something great there, Adrian.
I didn't even get into that, but you're quite right.
Yeah. There's something you just mentioned, Adrian, which I thought was really good. You were talking about large charities like the National Autistic
Sorry, I've got
Society.
a heavy rainstorm here in Portugal, which is where I'm living permanently as of yesterday, permanently resident. So yes, I hope you can still hear me.
Yes. So I was going to go back round everyone again and ask, why do we say rights, not charity? And why do we oppose some of those other big charities? So not just Children in Need, but also at times the National Autistic Society, places like the Royal National Institute for the Blind, the RNID, Leonard Cheshire Foundation, many of these groups.
MENCAP.
And MENCAP, Simone. I was trying to think which ones haven't I said yet. So actually, Simone, while your camera's on, can we go to you next? So why did Dan take stickers to all their buildings one time that said things like F off scope and F off MENCAP? What was all that about? Oh no, I'm wondering if I've lost Simone.
I have to go at 6, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I have to go at 6 for a church service. It looks like it's cutting out a bit anyway. Probably because of this rainstorm here in Portugal tends to do that.
Yeah, I think we've lost Simone for a second there. I'm going to go to somebody else just momentarily till we get Simone back. So what about Nigel?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I missed Sue. Yeah. Sue, did I come to you with the first question?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Oh, I did. Now I'm having an ADHD moment. Okay, so I'm going to ask if it's all right.
Here. Dennis, I'm
you
here.
Are here. Lovely. All right, Simone. So back to what I said. Why do we not like MENCAP and some of these organisations? Why do we shout rights, not charity?
Because a lot of the big charities do not see disabled people as in the context of rights. So I still don't know one big charity, quite happy to say it, for example, Council for Disabled Children, who say, yeah, we support the UNCRPD, which is the UN Convention Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and we support disabled children to have human rights, and therefore they still see us very much as a recipient of charity. So that's the first thing. And if you don't see us within a human rights context, then that obviously brings up issues. And a lot of these charities still run special schools, segregated education provision, and run run group homes and other institutions for disabled people. And we all know what happens when charities have run these kind of organisations. They're found wanting, there's no accountability. CQC have found, a number of these charities. I'm having to be very careful not to mention any single charity, but go to CQC, who have found that some of the, and Ofsted, that that a lot of this segregated provision is not, or is poor quality and questionable around abuse. But really importantly, none of these charities, I think, do enough to support our right to be included in mainstream education, right to life, right to everything in life, because after the end of the day, that's their survival is often dependent on charitable donations and rattling the check in, and therefore it's in the interest of these organisations to maintain the status quo, to provide for segregated provision, because that is how they get their funding, through providing segregated services, providing through rattling the tins, which if they were working, in a human rights context and were working with disabled people's led organisations or other mainstream providers, they're very unlikely, they're very unlikely to maintain the financial standing that they have right now, a lot of these charities. And therefore, that's why I think, that a lot of the charities don't do that. We did a 3-day of action, going to all the different charities, exactly for that reason. We really wanted to highlight to the chief executives, but actually what disabled people was rights and not charity. And that what we wanted was homes, not hospitals. What we wanted was mainstream education, not segregated education. What we wanted was independent living, the right to life, etc. And therefore we had a very clear message that we wanted to give to all these organisations, that there was definitely that what disabled people wanted was not what they were providing, and actually, they were part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Because part of the solution would be is that they would just disappear. If they disappear, altogether, and let disabled people's led organisations provide the support that is needed in order for us to thrive. Okay, done.
Thank you, Simone. That was awesome. I was thinking next I could go to Kate, if that's all right, then Nigel. So Kate, why does Dan hate charities, and why do we oppose some of those big disabled people's charities?
I love what Simone just said. I do think she's 100% right. Well, we've believed it for so long that the charities want to keep segregation going, because otherwise, many years ago, a friend of ours who had polio as a child was going to have a baby with his partner, who was a wheelchair user, and they wanted a lift put in their house. So polio in this country had been basically eradicated at the time. He knew how much money the charity had, which was, millions. So he applied to them to sort of ask for help to get a lift for his flat. Or I'm not sure whether it was a flat or a house. Do you, Sue?
It was a house, that was the thing, there were stairs.
Right, yeah. So anyway, he was turned down because the charity said that wasn't what they were for. You know, they were there to sort of do the same thing they'd been doing for years, which of course was try and cure polio, which in this country had been cured. So what were they actually doing? You know, that's the ridiculous parts of charity. It doesn't work. It works to keep the workers in a job. It works to keep us segregated. It doesn't work for children in need, people with polio. Yeah. Thank you.
Spot on, sis. Yeah, I mean, gosh, now I feel like I want to be singing a rewrite of that old song War, you know, like charity, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Oh, I'm going to go next to Nigel and then Sue, if that's all right. So Nigel, why did we take fuck off Scope stickers to Scope? Why do we hate charities that say they represent us and don't necessarily do it?
One of the problems with organisations like Scoop and Main Cup, they were originally organised to support parents of disabled children, and they do a good job of supporting parents of disabled people, you know. And they have, I can remember being at one meeting of Scope, and the spokesperson, who was an able-bodied person, I asked her why didn't they have a person with cerebral palsy as a spokesperson. We need to turn off Simone's phone. The sound on Simone's. And she said it was because people couldn't understand people with cerebral palsy. And I said, can you understand me? And she went, yes. I said, you can at least understand one person with cerebral palsy. And I can remember we need to look at what their real interests are. Stars are out to get their names in the papers when they do things, as much or more than to do things for the people or they're meant to be doing things for. Not my thoughts.
Well, that's so true. And I'm going to ask Sue a slightly different question and then Ernest.
Good one, Nigel.
Yeah, nice one. That's so true. Sue, so you were talking about protests earlier. Would you tell us more about the protest that you mentioned? Because I think that helps people get more of an idea about what's going on and also like how people react to us. Yeah,
sure. So Dan has staged quite a few protests, rights or charity protests at the block telethon, the Children in Need programme, the BBC, and also at the Sky telethon, Children in Need type programme. We went there in quite big numbers because we felt so strongly that these programs are actually in many ways doing us harm with their portrayal of us as pitiable. And in the long run, these children are going to grow up and they want to be treated as equals, not as dependent, pitiable, helpless people. So we protest there. We protest because the medical model rather than social model, and Dan is very much pro-social model in our approach. The medical model says that it's the individual that needs to change, and if they cannot change, they need to be segregated. So we actually feel that it's the structural inequalities and discrimination and barriers in society that need to be addressed to meet our needs in a fundamental way. Charities often just provide a sticking plaster. They don't really solve the issues in society. And like Nigel was saying, I very much agree that we were protesting because these shows are often for the benefit of the celebrities who flock there to make themselves look good and for the public to salve their consciences by giving a little bit of money. But really what is required is for our rights and needs to be met by central government without the need to beg. And so we went outside the studios where these programs were being broadcast to try and stop the broadcast. And we chanted and we put on our own disabled-led cabarets and shows and music and powerful, empowering lyrics and songs and poetry and speeches. And we felt much more empowered amongst ourselves protesting against these programs. We actually did achieve for telethon, ITV telethon, to be stopped. We went to the 1990 and the 1992 telethon and they did stop it. They realised that it was so outdated that they needed to stop. It wasn't good television. And the Children in Need is still running after all these years, but we did protest. I remember one protest, one of our Danners, Richard Downs, managed to get some tickets for inside the studio. So myself, Richard and Rachel Salmon, another Danner, we had the tickets. We went undercover basically into the studio, and we were going to be part of the audience, you see. So we got inside the studio, and one of the things we had this treat of going backstage, of meeting Pudsey Bear. So to be honest, we let off a few stink bombs, and Pudsey Bear didn't know where to put himself because he was stuck in his suit and he'd got some stink bombs which had appeared in his suit. And then we got into the audience and it was a live show. So we set off attack alarms because we felt our rights were being attacked by this program, which let off an awful lot of noise, interrupting the show, and they had to cut away to something outside the studios. Terry Wogan wasn't very happy. So once they realised where the disruption was coming from, i.e. myself, Rachel and Richard, security swiftly came along and threw us out of the studio. We tried to chain ourselves chooser inside the studios, but they did get us out. And then I think they called the police, and we were hounded out of the studio. But all the while we were shouting Bright Sort Charity as loud as we could as we left the studio. So that's the kind of protest that we took part in. And I'm now going to hand back to Dennis.
Oh gosh, that's such a funny story. And I wonder how poor Pudsey ended up with stink bomb inside their suit. Poor Pudsey. So as a closing question, I'm going to come to you, Ernest, actually, as speaking as an artist and a creator of media in particular. So given that one of the most problematic things with these big charities, and in particular with big events like Children in Need, where there's a lot of media footage, in context of that, why is it so important that disabled people's voices are heard and that we create our own media and so on?
I think one of the problems with charity is that we become nothing. We just become like a cash cow. You kind of wonder some of the, as others have pointed out, the motivations for some of these charities. And then are we simply there to support their agenda and their careers and so on? And you kind of wonder if we're just being used by them. So it's very important that we control our own story and our own image, that we create a far more positive image rather than a desperate, image of us being with the begging bowl, the sort of Oliver, please sir, can I have some more kind of thing, rather than showing us as being, energetic, running our own business sort of thing, or, having a family, inventing things, climbing rocks or riding horses and so on, or being an MP and things like this. All of those sort of things are far better for us as disabled people. So I, as an artist, I'm always trying to show independence of disabled people rather than anything else. It's very important that, the independence of disabled people is documented, and should be the predominant image. If charity is our dominant image, then we become slaves to that kind of image, and it's very hard for us then to rise above that, and for employers to see that actually we're very capable people, regardless of whatever disability we have, that we're very important and we contribute to society in a very important way. It really isn't the best image at all. And of course, charity in itself also creates a problem with society, in that all it does is it means that there's no, local councils can wash their hands of any responsibility. They don't have to provide anything. And so companies don't have to put either a decent ramp in or have a disabled toilet or make sure there is the right kind of computer equipment. They don't think that way at all. So it becomes something that becomes an enemy of us. And we have this battle to get some very simple things in our lives, that actually benefit everyone, not just disabled people, that everyone does benefit from all having, the buses lowering down. That's good for everyone because everybody can independently get about. So I think we should own our story, own our own images, and we should create our own images and tell, our own story, rather than other people controlling our story. And there's one last very important problem with these big telephones and everything. That's not our story. We're just being used in many ways to either, as I say, make careers for people or sell advertisement if it's on an advert channel. We're not, that's not what we should be about. So then the image of disabled people never changes in the eyes of everybody else. And they just pity us and they don't see us as an individual, as someone who is actually, as I say, important to the local community and has all the normal sort of facets of every other individual has. So I think it's very important that we always control our own image and our own story.
Thank you so much. And on that wonderful note, to everyone who's joined in today. So that's Ernest, Sue, Kate, Nigel, Simone and Adrian. And also I'm Dennis Queen. I'm a Dana from Manchester. And just to reiterate what Sue's t-shirt says, Dan says, piss on pity, and we want rights, not charity. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.